flow, that state of pure presence where everything is playing, interplaying, coursing around you, within you, so naturally, so easily, abundantly, and how we each ourselves are flows of life force, essence, allness. A poem for presence, a flow. You, me, all of us. A flow, a spirit, currents of blood, breath, thought, and feelings flowing inside a body streaming with aliveness inside the streams of every moment through each day, night, dreams, pools of other lives. A flow inside this all-swirling world, natural and man-made, inside its seen and unseen by the naked eye waves and tides, motion within motion, in continuous undulation, like a chambered nautilus, a plural of spirals, ascending and traversing through the depths and sweeps of its sea, like a mandala, centered and wheeling within the great gyring universe, micro into macrocosm, each of us consciously and unconsciously entering and exiting, rigorously meeting, mixing with liquid flows of energy, feeling, sound, light, mystery. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast. I'm glad you're here, and thank you for leaning in to the 67th show in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the waving edge of the Atlantic, from the overspilling-with-life ocean. This is your poet and poetorialist Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more poetically, more expressively, more soulfully. Last week, we moved through the forests and gardens of our lives, literally, literarily, and metaphorically, through many of their beauties, mysteries, and wisdoms. This week, I'd like to open a clearing to deeper presence, to states of being where you're not partly or lightly, but entirely and vividly there, here, wherever you are. Deeply experienced states that are not just sensory, but go fathoms below and beyond the surface of your thoughts and outer senses, where you're present inside and out in every way, to every moment, to the flow of every now, meaning widely and wildly awake, acutely aware, fully engaged, wholly attuned with yourself and whatever and whoever is around you. The good word, if you don't know it already, is you can come to be in these deep dimensions of being all the time, or at least far more often, and as a result, far more consciously, far more connectedly. I speak firsthand and believe if others can live in deeper presence, so can I, so can we. It only takes one person to show us what's possible on many different levels. Eckhart Tolle speaks of deeper presence in different ways. One of his is a metaphor of a ripple of the ocean, and the ripple realizing it is the ocean, realizing its essence and the depth and vastness it is part of, has come from, and is connected to, versus thinking or it thinking and feeling it's nothing more than a mere ripple on the surface. Well, what a universe of difference between them. So I've hand-picked anecdotes, cultural commentary, and poetry, which in itself is all about deeper presence, to give us varied, meaningful things to feel, to contemplate, some ways in to this expansive territory. So, let's venture there, shall we? Years back, I had a blog just out of personal interest that I had done. It's still out there. I think it's at 10owls.com. TENOWLS.blogspot.com. I think it's still there. And it was called Ideas from the Front Lines, and it was conversations with interesting people of interest to me that I knew on topics I felt worth exploring, that I was very curious about, sometimes ecstatically curious. And this particular one, which I pulled up from years back, is called Riding the Long Wave. It was a conversation about deep presence with Dan Kowalski, a Pacific Northwest filmmaker, a longtime commercial halibut fisherman, good champion at that, and a wilderness guide, who also produced a film called Deep Presence: Meditations on a Wild Coast, which might interest you. So here was one of my questions. Here are some of my questions and answers. Here's the first one. What is deep presence? He said, experiencing presence is coming into relationship with a person or place. Experiencing deep presence is coming into a deeply felt relationship with the living earth. I said, you believe this is an essential connection for each of us to find and feel, to rediscover. Our connectedness with each other and the larger living world is innate, yet greatly challenged and diminished. We have to regain our ability to experience it. It's in our best interest because it leads to a fundamental state of well-being, not just for us individually, but also for us collectively and as a society. In my experience, the entire earth has a deep presence and expresses itself magnificently. It's always there, even when muted by the buzz and rumble of human activity. I said, explain your long and short wave idea. He said, I think of wavelengths of light and sound and ocean currents as metaphors. Long waves have more penetrating power. At sunset and sunrise, we see the rich reds and oranges because these longer waves penetrate the thicker atmosphere, or the low thundering whoosh of a whale's breath you can hear across a stretch of water. Shortwave frequencies do have a place and value in our daily lives. They sharpen our mental processes, helping us to focus more clearly and analyze and act faster. And I say, but you're especially keen on riding the long wave. I am, he said, because the long wave gets short shrift in our modern culture, our technogenic culture, obsessed with speed and efficiency, but too often caught up as a result in shortwave multitasking behavior that's percussive and chronically distracting. Chronic distraction is the opposite of deep presence. Some wise traditions have upheld the long wave all along, including a deep respect and reverence for all living things. The Eastern and Native American cultures in particular, which are good models. With the monumental challenges facing us in the world, we desperately need to have and integrate both the long and short wave. Well, thank you, Dan Kowalski. And it goes out to him, wherever he is right now. Out on the West Coast, not the Pacific Northwest, in 2017, this poem of mine emerged directly apropos of our theme. And I remembered this, and so I brought it forth. It is called Deeper Presence. Means, happens, many fathoms below merely being here, simply showing up for. It's total immersion, connection, correlation with each place or person you engage with. Nothing surface or shallow, only substance and transcendence through all your self-distractions, self-absorptions, where you bring, feel, and are felt as a deeper, freer, and clear as a mountain stream presence in each moment. The poet David White, the poet and life philosopher, I've spoken of at other times because he's always a go-to for me on different things, has this to offer about what's in the way. So Dan Kowalski was talking about that short wave in the wayness. And White says, what is astonishing about our contemporary world is how few people are present to what is physically occurring around them. Distracted thumbs on phone keys are a brilliant, iconic image Shakespeare would use today, were he alive, to illustrate the desperate need to be busy and remain undisturbed by a larger horizon of human endeavor, for which we might feel inadequate. There is an unconscious sense that if we refuse to be present to the physical world around us, if we disappear into our screens, we will be held harmless for many of the greater physical patterns that might disturb and destroy the protected, often virtual worlds we have taken so much effort to construct around us. One of the many artful disciplines needed at this time is the art of poetry. Good poetry is speech fully in the physical body and fully in the body of the society into which it is spoken. It is the spoken edge between what I think is me and what I think is not me. It takes us beyond ourselves and into ourselves at exactly the same time. It's the place where the distance between us and others, between us and the world, comes to be healed and made more beautiful by intimacy. Well, thank you, David White, and we'll talk more about poetry now and then a little bit also later. As part of awakening and enlivening experiences that I create and choreograph and orchestrate and otherwise lead, especially out in nature at times, they're poets' walks, but they're not just a nature walk. They're much more. I infuse poetry and poetic ways of seeing that others can open to on their own beyond that experience, to show them how we can be more present, how we can take in more, how we can become more poetic in a way. Doesn't mean that we're writing poetry, what have you, but in a felt way. So I call this poetry as a place of presence and possibility. And I say as sort of at each start for everybody, poetry brings us in a breath into a present moment, ours and an experience embodied and distilled in a poem. It invites us to slow down, awaken, and heighten our senses, especially our mind's ear and eye, and enter into the presence and resonance of something fresh or beautiful, thoughtful or soulful. The best poetry can connect us to our inner self and outer world in wise and welcome ways, especially to enriching feelings from wonder to freedom to joy to solace, and fill us with an essence or echo of our deeper humanity, our greater possibilities, our aliveness. It can immediately, sometimes profoundly, expand our awareness, inspire our creativity, deepen our passion and compassion. Reading poetry or hearing it read aloud is a natural exercise in mindfulness, needing no training, only our openness to engage, imagine, simply be. Well, some of you know as a poet, being and staying totally open is essential. Freely and continuously open, and spontaneously open. That's when so much poetry of many different kinds, literally and figuratively, and beauty and serendipity arise, and aliveness, as we just mentioned. So this is a poem I wrote about what I'm up to at times. He writes poems about lovers and flowers, clouds and fjords, sun and moonlight, water light, eye light, shadows and buffaloes, bodies and melodies, the seas, the wilderness, ecstasies. About summer, color, waves and fauves, the land, the wind. About cities and eccentricities, memories and alchemies, gestures, atmospheres, sometimes stratospheres. He writes about soulfulness and earthliness, silence and presence, singing and longing, becoming, belonging. All poems about living and diving deeply into our days, into the wholeness, into the innocence, into the radiance. He writes poems. Yes, he does. Openness to self and life, and to moments, each moment, does involve a letting go of other things. And we can do it. This is you surrender willingly to the mystery, to the flow, to the source, to the soulful, to the wisdom of your intuition, callings, discoveries, to life's stories and songs wanting to be heard, wanting to be told, to its serendipities and its telltale full-scale harmonies. You surrender to a deeper humanity, humility, sense of innocence. So, knowing me, and tonight too, there's some of these themes will refrain in ways by me and others, and I think rightly so, because they're ingredients. We do have everything we need to be and become today and all days inside us, to evolve, to emerge beautifully, sensately, sentiently, wildly, spirited, and more. This is becoming a butterfly. Brightly colored, abundantly winged, lighter than air. To become one, you must climb out of your chrysalis, out of your carapace, your unmetamorphosed self. Discover, then enter your newer, truer form, and fly off, fly forth, flutter freely into the wider, wilder world. Some of you may be familiar with this next piece. I'm only going to read a very small part of it because it's quite long and it's wonderful, but no time for this tonight. We could take up at least the whole program doing it. It's Walt Whitman's Song of Myself from 1892. It's a paean to deeper presence and I guess you'd say self-blooming, fountaining. So here's a small slice of it. An invitation to open and enter and celebrate all of yours, as he did. Song of Myself. I celebrate myself and sing myself. And what I assume, you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I leaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old in perfect health, begin, hoping to cease not till death. Creeds and schools and abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard, nature without check, with original energy. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are crowded with perfumes. I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. The atmosphere is not a perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever. I am in love with it. I will go to the bank by the wood and become undisguised and naked. I am mad for it to be in contact with me. The smoke of my own breath, echoes, ripples, buzzed, whispers, love root, silk thread, crotch and vine, my respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn, the sound of the belched words of my voice loosed to the eddies of the wind, a few light kisses, a few embraces, a reaching around of arms, the play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs wag. The delight alone, or in the rush of the streets, or along the fields and hillsides, the feeling of health, the full noon trill, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and sun. There are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the specters in books. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself. Thank you, Walt Whitman. Well, for many, I think it's fair to say that being so present as he was, and sometimes takes courage, fearlessness of some kind. E.E. Cummings, on being unafraid to feel, said, to be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you everybody else means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight. Thank you, E.E. Cummings. There was also the white blues singer that some of you would know, Janice Joplin. This was from a 1968 conversation with Studs Terkel, who was a author, historian, and broadcasting pioneer. Died back in 2008. His time was 1912 to 2008. And she said that in that interview. Even a housewife in Nebraska can sing the blues. Anybody can sing the blues. Well, I don't know whether they can sing them or not, but they can feel them. All you got to do is have a throat. The throat's the difference. Everybody's got feelings inside of them. It's just the faculty of being able to transform it into music. I mean, everybody's got them. She's shouting at this point. I didn't hear the actual interview. I'm reading it, but everybody's got them. Mama got them. Papa got them. Everybody's got them. Everybody's got those things. They've just got to know what to do with it. You either repress it or you use it. Sort of. I feel better after singing. Yeah. So, thanks, Janice Joplin. Well, like many artists, painters to poets, I've composed self-portraits in words, also in visual poetry, ways of seeing myself, my beingness. It's not a vanity thing at all. It's actually sort of, I think, for all of us, the great artists of the past, to see where they were emotionally, psychically, metaphysically, across time, from a place of whatever that presence was, and to see it now maybe from a place of more presence and always unself-consciousness, I think, is the best way to go about it. You might try it. Yeah, you might see what's revealed back to yourself. So I just chose this one from the poet Linda Pastan, Pastan, self-portrait. I'm child to no one, mother to a few, wife for the long haul. On fall days I'm happy with my dying brethren, the leaves, but in spring my head aches from the flowery scents. My husband fills a room with Mozart, which I turn off, embracing the silence as if it were an empty page waiting for me alone to fill it. He digs in the black earth with his bare hands. I scrub it from the creases of his skin, longing for the kind of perfection that happens in books. My house is my only heaven. A red dog sleeps at my feet, dreaming of the manic wings of flushed birds. As the road shortens ahead of me, I look over my shoulder to where it curves back to childhood, its white line bisecting the real and the imagined the way the ridgepole of the spine divides the two parts of the body, leaving the soft belly in the center vulnerable to anything. As for my country, it blunders along, as well-intentioned as Eve, choosing cider and windfalls, oblivious to the famine soon to come. I stir pots, bury my face in books, or hold a telephone to my ear as if its cord were the umbilicus of the world, whose voices still whisper to me even after they have left their bodies. Thank you, Linda Pastan. I want to come back to David Whyte again because the importance of silence around presence is actually very important, and he speaks to that, silence, solitude, in his inspiring book of essays. If you don't know, it's called Consolations. I've often read and reread it, or parts of it. So, how in silence and solitude one's inner voices become audible so that you can respond more clearly to other lives. He says this there. In silence, essence speaks to us of essence itself and asks for a kind of unilateral disarmament, our own essential nature slowly emerging as the defended periphery atomizes and falls apart. As the busy edge dissolves, we begin to join the conversation through the portal of a present unknowing, robust vulnerability, revealing in the way we listen a different ear, a more perceptive eye, an imagination refusing to come too early to a conclusion, and belonging to a different person than the one who first entered the quiet. Reality met on its own terms demands absolute presence and absolute giving away, an ability to live on equal terms with the fleeting and the eternal, the hardly touchable and the fully possible. A full bodily appearance and disappearance, arrested giving in and giving up. Another identity braver, more generous, and more here than the one looking hungrily for the easy, unearned answer. Thank you, David Whyte. There's a lot to chew on there, and I hope you do. And the poet farmer Wendell Berry on the Value of Solitude said this: we enter solitude in which we also lose loneliness. True solitude is found in the wild places where one is without human obligation. One's inner voices become audible. One feels the attraction of one's most intimate sources. In consequence, one responds more clearly to other lives. The more coherent one becomes within oneself as a creature, the more fully one enters into the communion of all creatures. Well, I have a piece that I believe speaks somewhat to this, that we can discover far more treasure within ourselves in our days and our times than we might really imagine. So why not surprise ourselves and discover that treasure. This is called Crossing. This was from my one-man exhibition Behind the Curtain. This was back in the spring of 2018 when I debuted it. You, like this or another figure, reconfigure yourself as you cross each new frontier of self. Leave each old veneer of self, whether in light or shadow, through forests, seas, or deserts, whether you're young and callow or older and mellow. It's these crossroads we come to move through, that offer us pauses for deeper reflection, create points of greater inflection, expansion, so we might emerge on the other side, another side, reformed, refined, or newly revealed to ourselves and to the world. So I was thinking, of course, on these wavelengths about how there can be doubled or trebled presence in the intimate company of another, and the company of nature, sort of a form of another. And Kenneth Rexroth, and I have a couple of his poems today, he speaks to both, and also especially to layers of other, another and outer and inner quiet, peacefulness in this poem. It's called Quietly. Lying here quietly beside you, my cheek against your firm, quiet thighs, the calm music of Boccherini washing over us in the quiet as the sun leaves the housetops and goes out over the Pacific, quiet. So quiet the sun moves beyond us, so quiet as the sun always goes, so quiet our bodies, worn with the times and the penances of love, our brains curled, quiet in their shells, dormant, our hearts slow, quiet, reliable in their interlocked rhythms, the pulse in your thigh caressing my cheek, quiet. Thank you, Kenneth Rexroth. So these ingredients that we're talking about, solitude and quietude and silence and others, there's mindfulness, and I think, part and parcel is bodyfulness, so not just being centered in our heads, but in our bodies, or embodied, body, mind, and the breath and breathing are vital portals there. This is remember to breathe as we go along today and every day that you're living, because we sometimes forget, catch ourselves not breathing. Remember to breathe. Inhale now. Exhale then. Inhale possibility, exhale impossibility. Inhale tenderness, exhale loneliness. Inhale freedom, exhale boredom. Inhale you, all of you. Keep breathing. Annie Dillard has always good words for all of us, and the writer. And I've invoked her before, and she says, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. I'm going to say it again because it seems so simple, and yet, if we really think about that, it takes us to some other places of observation about our lives. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. What do we do with this hour and that one is what we are doing. A schedule defends from chaos and whim. It is a net for catching days. It is a scaffolding on which a worker can stand and labor with both hands at sections of time. A schedule is a mock-up of reason and order, willed, faked, and so brought into being. It is a peace and a haven set into the wreck of time. It is a lifeboat on which you find yourself decades later, still living. Each day is the same, so you remember the series afterward as a blurred and powerful pattern. I thought of Hermann Hesse around this because he spoke on his own back in time, prescription for breaking man and woman's trances of busyness and inattention. Just try it once, he said. A tree, or at least a considerable section of sky, is to be seen anywhere. It does not even have to be blue sky. In some way or another, the light of the sun always makes itself felt. Accustom yourself every morning to look for a moment at the sky, and suddenly you will be aware of the air around you, the scent of morning freshness that is bestowed on you between sleep and labor. You will find every day that the gable of every house has its own particular look, its own special lighting. Pay it some heed if you will have for the rest of the day a remnant of satisfaction and a touch of coexistence with nature. Gradually and without effort, the eye trains itself to transmit many small delights, to contemplate nature and the city streets, to appreciate the inexhaustible fun of daily life. From there on to the fully trained artistic eye is the smaller half of the journey. The principal thing is the beginning, the opening of the eyes. Thank you, Hermann Hesse. Well, that brought me to the poet William Stafford. I felt was a fitting voice on being awake, because we absolutely have to be awake, awakened, certainly aware, and not get lost in the dark, or being asleep or going back to sleep once we're awake, in that larger sense. This is a ritual to read to each other. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there's many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders the circus, won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider, lest the parade of our mutual life gets lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. Thank you, William Stafford. This is all sort of toward deeper presence. And most or many of us know when we're not present, I would say. I hope we do, or will come to, let alone fully or deeply aware. Because when we're really awake, this rarely happens. And we can also see others' visibility or their invisibility. And back in 2018, I wrote a poem about an experience that I had prior, a couple of years earlier, about someone I knew extremely closely who for a good while, a very good while, was deeply present, then not. And I, in my own awareness, awakeness, could see it happening before my eyes. And this poem came to me about that experience, called Now You See Her, Now You Don't. A real magician, self-taught, who knew how to disappear better than anyone, even the best illusionists. In broad daylight, moonlight, between mouthfuls of food, even roomfuls of people, right before your eyes. Sometimes bodily, into thin air, sometimes emotionally, entirely dissolving her presence. A so surprising, always unsettling, vanishing act, because you were never sure when she was going to disappear again, without a word. So I'm encouraging us all to know the difference and to stay as visible as you can, as present as you can, as you go. The greater our presence in any given moment, the greater our aliveness. And I'd like you to experiment with this too. Would you agree with that from your own experience? I'd love to actually hear from you about it. Again, Kenneth Rexroth, this is Confusion of the Senses. Moonlight fills the laurels like music. The moonlit air does not move. Your white face moves toward my face. Voluptuous sorrow holds us like a cobweb, like a song, a perfume, the moonlight. Your hair falls and holds our faces. Your lips curl into mine. Your tongue enters my mouth. A bat flies through the moonlight. The moonlight fills your eyes. They have neither iris nor pupil. They are only globes of cold fire, like the deer's eyes that go by us through the empty forest. Your slender body quivers and smells of seaweed. We lie together listening to each other breathing in the moonlight. Do you hear? We are breathing. We are alive. Thank you, Kenneth Rexroth. So in my book of life, as you could have guessed, and our hearing being wholly present brings tremendous clarity, out of which so much else springs. This is seeing clearly. It's better expressed than I could just say it anecdotally. Just read you this. Without blinders or blindfolds, illusion or confusion, looking consciously, wide openly, without looking away, seeing straight to the bottom of the waters, of yourself, of others, of everything before you, all things below, above and around, your mind, your heart, your present moment, your future. And in that clear blue sky seeing, you find that your choosing, your living, your loving becomes so natural. Moving wisely through your days, engaging the world confidently becomes usual. And the beauty, the pure joy of being your own person, a one and only man or woman, in the mirror and in the eyes of those you know, comes often and easily, so affirmingly, when you're open, able, committed, no matter what or where it leads, to see everything clearly. And for me, every animate form of life, animals to trees, as we heard in my broadcast number 66, the other last broadcast, in the wild, they hold and emanate such deeper presence just because they do, such natural presence. So I think about, what can we learn? I thought about that, and this led to this poem. What can we learn from our fellow animals who are only ever, and so beautifully, so wildly themselves, pure presence? Each moment, no pretense, ambivalence, no choosing otherness. The great blue heron, the dolphin, humpback whale, the leopard and lion, the mustang, the majestic elephant, and the rest of the living world, the remarkable realm of mountains and clouds, fjords and trees we share the planet with, paragons of wholeness, perfect models of naturalness, who show us the vibrancy and harmony of simply being at one. Imagine the freedom of denying nothing, being bravely visible in your animal skin, embodying, expressing your own clear and true human nature. This was to a fellow poet of mine. It actually happens to be a cousin, Dee Dee Cummings. It was on her birthday, but I feel it's into those moments of when I have felt so there, so in touch with everything inside and out of you, outside of you. This is called when you're flowing, when your heart is full, when your senses are open to all that's inside and out, when you're singing your life song, dancing your life dance, wild and free, to music only you can once in this lifetime make. Everything is poetry. So if you hear some background noise, we have some young kids around the house, but hopefully that's all right with you. The past writer, Willa Cather, on attention and the life of the senses and art, she said many people seem to think that art is luxury to be imported and tacked onto life. Art springs out of the very stuff that life is made of. Most of our young authors start to write a story and make a few observations from nature to add local color. The results are invariably false and hollow. Art must spring out of the fullness and the richness of life. Okay, I'm just going to move along to Muriel Rukeyser, who spoke of what poetry does for us and why some resist it. She said, a way to allow people to feel the meaning of their consciousness in the world, to feel the full value of the meanings of emotions and ideas and their relations with each other, and to understand in the glimpse of a moment the freshness of things and their possibilities. There is an art which gives us that way, and it is in our society an outcast art. In this book, I have tried to track down the resistances to poetry, with every kind of, quote, boredom and impatience, the name-calling, which says that poetry is, quote, intellectual and obscure and confused and sexually suspect. How much of this is true, and how much can be traced to the corruption of consciousness? We can see that what these attitudes mean, an impoverishment of the imagination to audience and to artist, both of whom are deeply affected. A poem does invite, it does require. What does it invite? A poem invites you to feel. More than that, it invites you to respond. And better than that, a poem invites a total response. This response is total, but it is reached through the emotions. A fine poem will seize your imagination intellectually. That is, when you reach it, you will reach it intellectually too, but the way is through emotion, through what we call feeling. Poetry is written from these depths. In great poetry, you feel a source speaking to another source. Thank you, Muriel Rukeyser. So what does it mean to you to truly be? Is it active? Is it passive? Some of each. Is it conscious? Is it delicious? Have you mused on it much? If not, you can. This is Being. I wrote this out in Shelter Harbor in actually 2021, April, the spring of this year. It's called Being. In the heart of the forest, of the jungle, of darkness, of yourself, standing still, in the heart of places far larger than you imagined, taking in, drinking in all the immensities, all the subtleties, where streams of primal feelings, visceral knowings flow through your body, echo clearly through every openly, deeply receiving chamber. This is a brand new poem. Just wrote this a few days ago as I returned here to the ocean side, and where I was nowhere else but all and joyously in the experience of that moment. It's called Arriving. At nightfall, to the ocean, pull up and step out into a tropical balm of shoreward breeze, salty and lush, to a buck moon, naked and rising, to far left flashes of thunderless lightning, softly sparking rose and violet, to descending quiet, to a place for now, these coming summer days and eves. I'm glad to be received by, return this body and spirit back to. Here's a poem dating all the way back to Japan, to the early 1800s. It was translated by the poet Jane Hirschfield, who I've spoken of other times. It's called, and this poem by Isa's Cricket. On a branch, floating downriver, a cricket, singing. And the philosopher-poet John O'Donohue has this to share with us from his splendid book, Beauty, the Invisible Embrace. As we think about fully engaging things like color and light, anywhere and everywhere. He said the presence and experience of color is at the very heart of human life. In a sense, we are created for a life full of color. When we attend to color and light, our souls are fed. Color is the language of light. Light is the greatest unnoticed force of transfiguration in the world. It literally alters everything it touches, and through color dresses nature to delight, befriend, inspire, and shelter us. The miracle of color is a testament to the diverse, precise, and ever-surprising beauty of the primal imagination. As Goethe said, quote, "The eye needs color as much as it needs light." So here's my own poem to sort of pair with that, For Light, from June of 2021, back up in Rhode Island. It's called Outer and Inner. Outer light, the light around us that surrounds and affects us subtly, too profoundly, bathes and suffuses us quietly, beautifully. Inner light, the light that lanternly shines from our beings, from our eyes, sometimes sun-like, sometimes moon-like. This light we share with the light of the stars we're made of, come from, wonder on. Outer and inner, the changing light, lightness we can emit and witness of the dawn to dusk skies, the still and moving clouds, the waters of the open seas, nature's seasons, of our touching and being touched, our speaking, places of feeling, ways of moving through the days, through the world, of our loving, of our dreaming. I wanted to read this piece. I'm going to drop a few up just in the interest of our overall time, because I wanted to talk about spirit and soul, which I sometimes do because their felt presence is significant. And I think the more we can sense them, feel them, touch into them, the more present we can be. So how about such mysterious, known or unknown presences we encounter from some realm, ethereal, or some intangible place? This happened to me up in Maine. I was up by Lake Damascata in Nobleboro, Maine, a few years back, and this happened to me. In the middle of the night I woke. What is this presence? Close around me, in the night darkness, in the deep stillness, enfolding me like a lover with such tenderness, like a mother with such benevolence. Is it the presence of the land and water I lie above? Is it a soft, silent angel revealing its protecting wings? Or my own spirit, my anima, holding me so transcendently and showing me I'm really a body inside a breathing soul? Well, when we're truly and fully seen, heard, understood, truly, how beautiful that is and how alive we feel in that exchange. I do my best to see others and honor that seeing and see into them, people I know and love all the time, and without holding anything back. And I think they can be quite big for them sometimes, but they seem to take it in, and I'm going to keep doing it. And so I wanted to just share at least one or two of them. This was for Antonia Rosselló on her birthday. It's called Real Beauty. We know it when we see it with all our senses, when we feel it in our heart, in the heart of our being, when it touches chords that transcend all words, that resonate in a spirit place, so simply, so purely, when we behold someone like you. Well, when I was pondering deep presence, I was also thinking especially of the Native Americans and other indigenous tribal cultures. They come to mind because they're so, in their own way, they're so present to themselves, to each other, to their land, to nature, and very reverent toward it. And this was another from the exhibition I mentioned, Behind the Curtain, which also included a visual portrait of this character, the story, character, the native, who listens to the wind, who dances with the sun, the moon, drinks from clear waters, moves in silence among the deep presence of trees and animals, who honors the sacred land and his embodied ancestors, bows to beauty, lives from pure humanity. Well, in addition to this, that earlier poem, a Japanese poem, there was a 19th century Eskimo poem, a Glulik poem that Jane Hirschfeld translated by Uvavnuk. It's an untitled shaman song. The great sea frees me, moves me, as a strong river carries a weed. Earth and her strong winds move me, take me away, and my soul is swept up in joy. I wanted to also honor those of us who develop our way of seeing more deeply others and ourselves in the world. This is called What is Hidden. Is only hidden from unseeing eyes. To the rest, it's all present, all presence. The tender heart, the shining soul of another, holding their deepest dreams and desires, doubts and fears, beauty and mystery out in the open. Well, seeing yourself more deeply, yourself, well and below the surface, is fascinating and clarifying and often galvanizing, and I was speaking about it a little earlier, and I wanted to give you this thought poem, I guess we could call it, but a thought poem, not an out-of-body experience, an other-body experience before a moonlit mirror where the usual I disappears and another me in an opposite yet mysteriously present body appears, fully formed, statuesquely, almost anciently faced, who gazes so silently, transcendingly from another place, a knowing place, into, through, and beyond my visible self and the ether we're sharing in these suddenly, fleetingly middle-of-the-night communing moments. There's William Stafford again, a poetic meditation of a kind on our beingness. Your life, it's called. You will walk toward the mirror, closer and closer, then flow into the glass. You will disappear someday like that, being more real, more true at the last. You learn what you are, but slowly. A child, a woman, a man, a self often shattered, and pieces put together again, till the end. You halt. The glass opens. A surface, an image, a past. Thank you, William Stafford. I'd also like to reprise this poem around the theme because presentness means being present in and to our humanness and our sense of humanity, of shared humanity. This is our humanity. A call. What we belong to, what we can point to out there around us, and what a singular gift. Our innate sentience, deeper humanness, shared with 8 billion other souls and bodies. What we can rise to in here, if and when we choose to or are moved to. Summon the truer and fuller humanity that, whether clearly or obscurely, resides so surely within each of us, whether it's eager or reticent, lost or longed for, sleeping or awakening. I remember ceremonies that began in the dark of a church or a country field, a first candle being lit from a source, and from that first lighting to the other held by the person beside. Then each holder in turn letting their flame light the next and next until all were aglow, until we soon cascadingly formed one immense body of light, a bonfire of human kindled kind, reflecting spirits reflected in eyes, beaconing a remembering out, sending a hope-filled illumination out into the unseen and unknown. The same way the flame of your humanity and mine, instead of flickering alone, can be lit, fed, combined, and enlarged, can join the wicks, the rising spirits of all those who, from where we stand, we cannot see or know, but can feel, in the center of our chests, enough to create a great forest, a great sea, family of uniting, igniting humanity, a shared light rise, the greatest that people of any time in history or memory have ever known, a conscious, joining, generous emanating of human light, benevolent light that brings wanted, beyond needed solace, strength, and wordless togetherness forth to soothe the heart and smooth the future of the trembling world. Okay, we're coming down to the last stretch. I wanted to invoke the great ancient Roman philosopher Seneca. Everyone hustles his life along and is troubled by a longing for the future and weariness of the present, but the man who organizes every day as though it were his last neither longs for nor fears the next day. Putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes and denies us the present by promising the future. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours. What are you looking at? To what goal are you straining? The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. Thank you, Seneca. So as we wind out, we've got a few more things I'd like to share before we go. Bring Yourself to This Day is a poem about entering our day entirely, coming to it and into it and meeting its energies and essences, which I encourage us all to do, beginning now, if you can, this evening or tomorrow. This was written for the summer solstice, but it's apropos. Bring yourself to this day, this solstice day, regenerous day of new summering, good naturing, the sun so greatly lengthening, the trees so freely dancing in ever deeper, ever greener ecstasies, the clouds caressing the open skies and dotting the eyes of sailors and mountaineers, painters and sonneteers, the waters of lakes and rivers, firths and fjords, bays and sounds, clear and mirroring. Bring yourself, your whole nature, bodily, spiritly, as bountifully, to this day of balance and beauty, dalliance and euphony between the boundless heavens and the returning earth, with a lightning heart and long, lengthening breath. You reading this, be ready, said William Stafford in this poem, starting here, What do you want to remember? How sunlight creeps along a shining floor? What scent of old wood hovers? What softened sound from outside fills the air? Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? Are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn around, starting here, lift this new glimpse that you found. Carry into evening all that you want from this day. This interval that you spent reading or hearing this, keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now, starting here, right in this room, when you turn around? And Bernhard Günther, this is a quote from him on being present and in alignment. Slow down, sink into your gut, be present to what is, and the universe, nature, and the divine will open to you in ways you cannot possibly grasp intellectually and in ways you could never have predicted. Be first, then do, in alignment. Embrace the mystery of the unknown and enjoy the ride. It's what you signed up for. So, listeners, let's call forth our own and each other's full-on expression, expressiveness, presence. If not now, when? As I say now and again to friends, after all, this is it. This is it. So let's have it. That's the title. A call to expression. All your color and flavor, light and shadow, saltiness, sweetness, your fresh squeezed juice, juiciness, the pith and zest, sinew and marrow within, all the laughter and the tears, your unbidden laughter, unhidden tears, your face as a visible, changeable weather map, full of sun or rain, blue or gray, heat or cold, squalls, gales, jet streams, water spouts, showing us the days, seasons of your patterns, moods, and forecasts. Tell us of your life dreams, heart's desires, your quests and visions. Give us the play of all your postures and gestures, ways of engaging, acts of responding, how your body can speak, dance, love without words. Share with us the voice, songs, chords, sculpting, scrivenings, colors, and brushstrokes. All the expressions of your being, of your making, of your spirit kindling, with no holds, no binds or blinds. Free as a bird, as a kite, as the wind, just letting it rip, letting it flow, letting your soul glow through your eyes and skin, giving us all the wholeness, the largeness, nuance, exuberance of your here on earth, rare on earth self. Oh yes, let's have it. Thank you again for listening in, floating and feeling in, and thanks to all of you showing up often and those letting me know how these broadcasts serve your well-being. Because I consciously create and present these programs to nourish spirits, uplift hearts, and spur greater self-awareness and aliveness. If you enjoyed this program or appreciate my poetic arts and want to make a donation, I'd welcome your generosity by PayPal or Venmo or directly through my site or by mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891. Any patrons out there interested in hosting me on a part of their property as a working poet in residence for several weeks or more, late summer or this fall or winter, to bring forth a flight of poetic art and dedicate it to you, I'd welcome that conversation. I also invite fellow artists, co-creators to collaborate with on projects from the musical to the theatrical, and producers, directors, or others seeking a deeply poetic voice and spirit. If, by the way, you're interested in a fine art piece, an individually signed giclée print of any one of more of the show images of my visual poetry that are paired with each of the broadcasts, they're makeable to order and collectible. Just email me for details, colin@thepoetorialist.com. I think most of you know all the broadcasts are online as replays on my YouTube playlist, the Floating Poetry playlist. I hope you lean in again next week, or soon again. Until then, dear listeners, here's to coming to deeper presence in your moments, your days, your lives, and all the resonance and expansiveness, fulfillment and aliveness that complete engagement with the here and now brings. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.